Captain Slog, Stardate 13. This one's actually 13. Last one was 12. I got that wrong. Stardate 13. These are the continued voyages of me, Eddie Edwards, and my friend and colleague, Mr. Mark O'Neill, as we trek through all of Star Trek, The Next Generation, here from 10 forward. Mark, how you been? How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I have discovered my new favourite ASMR video.
Okay, it's big news.
So just to give a bit of background, ASMR. It's one of these things. I'm not really sure if it's well known enough that I don't have to explain it. But the problem is that if you don't already have it, me explaining it to you isn't going to help that situation, and you are just going to think that a lot of people are fucking lunatics.
Yeah, when I first had it explained to me, I was one of those people who went, "Oh, that!"
Yeah. You're either going to you're either going to be like, "Of course I have that," or what? It's like a sense of relaxation thing, isn't it? It's like a...
Yeah, I put it as it's the most closely. If you haven't got it, the thing that's closest to is when you get goosebumps listening to music.
Yeah.
But it's for non-musical things.
And
it's like getting a shiver down your spine sort of sensation.
It feels internal more, I'd say, than goosebumps as well. But the weirdest thing whenever you try to explain this to anyone is like what actually triggers it, which is always something. It's unique to people, but it's always something very bizarre. And it will generally involve a relaxing situation with someone giving you, or you watching someone being given personal attention. And my favourite one that I have discovered recently is this like young Japanese woman goes to, and I've seen a lot of videos that start that way. So this young Japanese woman goes to an acupuncturist for what is described as facial realignment and balance, where the acupuncturist basically brings this girl in and is like, right, your face is not balanced, your face is asymmetrical, and she stands behind her in front of a mirror and like points at the corners of her eyes and goes, as you can see, your right eye is slightly lower than your left eye, and your right cheekbone is slightly higher than your left cheekbone, and this is all in Japanese. So this poor, like, she must be maybe like 23, 24, lass is just going, hi, and just nodding along really quietly with this woman just fucking
ruins her self-esteem.
Yeah, exactly. And then she gets down to like, yeah, if you put your chin out, yeah, you can see it there, can't you? Like the start of this jawbone and the start of that jawbone, your ears, you're all over the place, hen. Basically, in like polite Japanese. The issue is, and I don't know if this is a part of my enjoyment, this lass has a like one of the most symmetrical faces I have ever seen in my entire life. Right, this lass is like, it's like God drew the left side of her face and then just Control T, invert and copy, right? And you can see that the acupuncturist is like going out of her way because she sort of puts her fingers, like she'll put her finger next to her left eye and her other finger next to her right eye, and you can tell that she's like just manipulating, like she's basically doing like a Derren Brown sort of talk like bullshit situation, like just convincing this poor lass that her face is asymmetrical when we can all see that it isn't. And then there's a half-hour like service where she gets. Did you ever use in school, in craft and design or in woodwork or in metalwork, like an auto center punch?
Oh yeah.
So it looks like a pen, but when you press down on it, it's kind of spring-loaded and it leaves a little mark.
Yeah.
So first of all, she lays this glass down on her front, right?
By the way, just a quick thing. If you're a driver, have one of those in your car. If you crash into a lake, you can use it to smash the window.
That's good.
Just a genuine safety tip there.
Because I carry one with me at all times, just in case I need to make a point.
Or in case you run into an unsymmetrical Japanese girl.
So she fucking lies her down, right? And she pulls her hair up and she's like, I'm going to relax the nerves in the back of your neck. And she starts center punching the back of this lass's neck, right? And she's like, does it hurt? And the lass is like, hi. And she's like, yeah, don't worry about it, it's supposed to hurt. turns her back round, and then she's like, as you can see, just doing that has made your jaw more aligned and more symmetrical. And I'm just like, I'm getting super fucking relaxed by this, right? I don't know whether it's the soft music or the Japanese accents. Well, not so much accents as voices. Or it's just, I don't know what it is about the look on this lass's face. Because you can tell that there's a level where she's like, this is obviously bullshit. And my face is fine. But at the same time, the last time I did this exact video, it got 1.8 million views. So... I don't know, man. There's just something really satisfying about it. I've watched it multiple times. Most of those 1.8 million are me. Anyway, that's been my week. How are you?
I'll admit, yeah. He is behind the TV. Right. Sorry, my girlfriend was just asking me where the PlayStation controller's been hidden because the dog has decided that it's lovely to chew. But yeah, I've got two bits of news. The first bit of news is dog news, Mark. So, as you know, my dog is a Romanian rescue dog because I'm a good person. And every now and then, like when I've been walking, I've had two people now guess that my dog is Romanian because she looks Romanian, which is like which is one, you're right, but two, you do come across as a dog racist, like coming over here taking work from good hard working British dogs. She's not. She's bone fucking idle. But so
just like
recently.
She
is. You can tell she's Romanian because she is a fully qualified electrician. But somebody the other day said she looks not Romanian, but she specified what she meant. She said she looks like a Romanian shepherd, which again, she's bone idle. She doesn't have a job. So I've googled the Romanian shepherd, and it's a big, lovely looking dog, Mark, and I do like it, and it's clear now I've seen it. Yeah, she clearly does have some of that. She's a mongrel, she's a street dog, but she's not purebred, but she's definitely got some of that in her. But I only bring this up, Mark, because there is another name for the Romanian sheepdog, the Romanian shepherd, and that is the Carpathian shepherd. Exactly. Yeah, and now I'm super annoyed I didn't name my dog Vigo.
She would be the first Carpathian shepherd. You should.
I know.
You should get her a dog bed that looks like a mountain of skulls in a castle of blood. She sits on a throne of pain.
I've got the little dog tag she's got at the moment. It's got our address and our phone number on one side and our phone number on the other. And I want to get a different one done that's got our address and phone number on one side, and then on the other side says, "Death is but a doorway, time is but a window. I shall return."
And now you know why. Now you know why she's so friendly with your cat is because she's suffering from Carpathian kitten loss. So I had friends. So I used to work at the London Dungeon, and my friends Ryan and Alex were pretty huge Ghostbusters fans. And one of the shows is that they were like the judge and the clerk. And you get people up on stage and you do like fucking Butlins gags, like, "Oh, you're from Wales, here's a sheep," right? But one time, and everyone hated it. It was terrible. And one time they got a wee boy up, and they were like, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Vigo." And all of a sudden, a 6-minute show turned into a fucking 10-minute show, because obviously they were like, "You people, you are like the buzzing of flies to him."
And the other news, Mark, is of course I'm getting zapped in the brain with radiation. Because so for those people who listening to this as a first episode might not know this, I've got a brain tumour, which might not sound funny, but I think there's humour in it. But then again, I wouldn't necessarily trust my judgment. I've got a fucking brain tumour.
Yeah, I mean, it is the best material that your head has ever created. As I once said in a roast battle.
But it turns out it's been growing at a faster rate than my comedy career. And I've got to get zapped by this thing called the gamma knife. And okay, right. I've got to go into the hospital and they've got to take a mould of my head and do another MRI. And then I go back in 2 weeks later and they sit me in a chair and the mould is so I don't move my head. Which I was like, can't you just accomplish that with a vice? And then they zap radiation into my head. Now, apparently before the invention of this, my treatment would have been 50 days in hospital of getting zapped every day because they need to give you a small enough dose that it doesn't kill your brain. But with this, it's one session of half an hour. Right? Think about that. You can start watching Countdown, right? Have a cup of tea, go get your brain tumour cured, and be back in time for the conundrum. Right?
Now, I'm a man. I love scientific progress. Right? I celebrate it every day. The vaccine. I'm not going to call them anti-vaxxers because I don't think that it's it's not necessarily a full-blown anti-vaxxer opinion. Vaccine hesitant, which I on some human level I do empathise with, right? Yeah. But this idea that they were like, yeah, this disease has only been around for a little while, and yet this vaccine's come out very quickly, and there's no conspiracy about it. They're just like, it seems weird that this has come out this quickly, therefore I don't really trust it, therefore I'm going to wait for a while. Which again, on a human level, I totally understand and empathise with. But if a doctor was to turn around to me and say, this radiation that we're going to shoot inside your brain used to take 50 days, but don't worry, we've knocked it down to half an hour, I'd be like, I don't know about this, man.
It's when I heard that, I was like, oh, because if you get a brain tumour, you're hoping for more than an afternoon off work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it turns out the recovery time's 8 weeks, and I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, because like we're essentially dumping a shitload of radiation into your head. So it inflames because basically the tumour dies.
Yeah.
It doesn't shrink. It's just its corpse is forever in my head as I carry it around like a trophy, like I'm Geralt of Rivia. And so it expands, so it makes all of my symptoms worse temporarily because it's like inflamed while it's dying. It's like from a hell's heart I stab at these situation, and then they said, yeah, no, you'll have like some like loss of cognitive function, you'll be hazy and like tired for like 8 weeks, and I was like, okay, that's an acceptable amount of time to be off work.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be like thick for 8 weeks, so I'll be able to tell you what it feels like to think leaving the EU is a good idea.
Was that whole story just leading up to that?
Yeah. No, the first podcast after it happens, it's just going to be me sitting there going, look, say what you want about Boris, but he's trying his best.
We need to fucking... when is this happening?
So I go in on the 24th of February for the moulding process. Which is also the MRI, and then I go to a clinic and they ask me the thing is they ask you a bunch of like health questions.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I going to say that is worse than a brain tumour?
I'm just thinking, well, we'll still be in season 1, so
yeah, I'm hoping like it should be like I worked it out, we'll be coasting into season 2,
right?
So I might start to really, really enjoy these episodes of stuff. In all honesty, I wish I could have done it before this one.
I hate everything about this. I hate that I had to watch this episode. I hate that I had to read about this episode. I hate that I have to fucking talk about this episode.
I want to say one nice thing about this episode. The alien planet they go to has a nice modern Japanese aesthetic in terms of the design.
Right.
Like everyone kneels down, they have like pads instead of furniture and low chair tables. That's it.
Would you prefer that? Like, would you want that to come over here?
I'm 37. I can't. I've been prescribed stretches by my doctor, so my back doesn't hurt. No, I have trouble stroking the dog. I think she thinks I'm aloof because it's like, no, you're all the way down there.
I have started very occasionally taking to using chopsticks with non-chopstick food.
All right, what, like a Mars bar?
Yeah. Not just like a chicken and potatoes situation.
I like the chopstick as a utensil.
Me too.
Because you can use it to eat food, and if a vampire sneaks up on you, bam, got them.
See that? You can't do that with a fork.
No, unless you've got a wooden fork.
In which case, it's not going to work as well.
Yeah.
Done. I feel like we're what's the
Stalling.
Yeah, we're stalling.
Yeah.
So, please explain the plot of this episode.
Oh, God. The plot of this episode is that the Enterprise goes to the planet Women, and when they get there, bitches be cray. No, yeah, it's so okay. The Enterprise is checking out a distress call from I love this, by the way, a freighter mark that's a little overdue. It's 7 years overdue, and this is the first time anybody from the Federation has gone to check it out. And an escape pod's missing and it's empty. So they follow the escape pod, they wind up on this planet, and it turns out the planet is a female-dominated society. And then it turns out that the guys who landed there were all men, and they've been stirring up some sort of like revolution against the matriarchal society. And then they get captured, they need to get put to death, but then they decide not to because Riker gives a speech. That's not what I want, TNG. But yeah, it's the plot of this episode, Mark, can best be described as: imagine if women were men. I bet they'd be worse.
So, right, I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna read this straight up. Right, it's gonna have some things in it that we'll come back to later. But yeah. I just this is something that I really enjoyed. I found this in the book. I didn't write it down. It's in a book about Star Trek.
Okay.
An early story meeting about this episode was attended by Patrick Barry, Gene Rodenberry, and Herbert Wright. Wright was worried that the concept of a matriarchal society had been too overdone. Quote, so one of the major issues that we didn't want to do was an Amazon women type of thing where the women are 6 feet tall with steel D cups. I said, the hit I want to take on this is apartheid, so that the men are treated as though they are the blacks of South Africa. We'll get back to that in a minute. That's not even the weirdest part of this statement.
Okay.
Make it political. Sexual overtones, yes, but political. Well, that didn't last very long. Everything that Gene got involved with had to have sex in it. It's so perverse that it's hard to believe. The places it was dragged into is absurd. We were talking about how women would react, and Gene was voicing all the right words again, saying, oh yes, we've got to make sure that women are represented fairly, because after all, women are probably the superior sex anyway. And it's real important that we don't get letters from feminists, because we want to be fair and we don't want to infer that women have to rule by force if they do rule, because men don't have to rule by force. Which is like, okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's an interesting point that you've brought up there, right? It continues. Very sensible stuff. All of a sudden, something kicks in and he says, however, we also don't want to infer that it would be a better society if women ruled. His voice becoming increasingly louder. Roddenberry continued that this was because women were, quote, untrustworthy, vicious creatures, which he angrily blurted out in a torrent of hateful verbiage. Then he looks out the window, looks at the outline and says, okay, on page 8, and continues like that didn't even happen.
Oh, Mark, can you imagine having to make the phone call to your mum about this episode? Like, you're an actor and you've been cast, and you ring up your mum and go, Mum, I've got a role in Star Trek. She's like, oh, that's amazing. What's your role? My role is small girlish man.
So,
or large mannish woman.
Yeah, just everything. Just because one thing to point out, if you're not watching this along with us, the idea is that this is a planet, and Riker, I think Geordi and Riker actually talk about this. They are a planet that is in their own progress, round about the mid 20th century.
Yeah, around about the mid 20th century. You know, Mark, when we were putting women to death, for wanting the vote.
Yeah, exactly. So the men are sort of in it. Imagine like the women, the men on this planet are treated like women were on our planet in our society.
Yeah, about 1950.
And about 1950, but didn't have the vote.
Yeah.
Or anything. Which I can already tell you a way to make this story far more interesting is just put men in charge and be like, what would the 1950s have been like if women didn't have the vote?
Yeah.
That's already inherently more interesting idea.
Or a more interesting is to do it literally paralleling like the time that you were in. Like set it so that this society is like being a woman in 1986 is for the men, which is there's nothing obvious, but when they land, the leaders immediately talk to the women, like and highlight, literally write the script as if you were writing a normal planet, and then when you're finished, flip the genders.
Yeah.
And let all of the unconscious bias be obvious because now you can see it because you're seeing it from a perspective you're not used to seeing it from. Yeah. Is more interesting than literally anything they do.
It's like how if you look into the mirror in a Japanese acupuncturist office, you will see the imperfections in your asymmetric face, as the therapist says to the poor girl. But the top comment on that video is, "This is the most polite roast session I've ever seen."
Now, one thing I do want to bring up is that there is an important point in this episode, which is that because Picard decides that Troy should take the lead on the away mission, which is a qualification she has because she's a woman. And I just wanted to highlight that as the first actual qualification that Troy actually holds. She is a woman. We can't deny that. We can deny that she's a competent counsellor and a psychic. That's open.
I like the bit where the nonce from Prison Break was like, "I'm a doctor," and she's like, "We'll be great together. I'm a qualified psychologist," and he just goes, "Okay."
There's also like after the intro, and actually I've got a question I want to ask you about this. Have you, so far in the time we've been watching TNG, have you ever used the skip intro option on Netflix?
No, never.
No, neither have I.
And Laura has brought it up more than once. She's picked up the remote and then went, "Oh, sorry, I forgot that we watched this bit." Of course we fucking watched this bit. It's like why does Disney Plus even have a skip intro option on The Simpsons? That is like or Red Dwarf. Like those theme songs, they might as well be distilled into pure joy.
Netflix has a skip intro option on Breaking Bad, and the Breaking Bad intro is 2 seconds long. Who doesn't have time for that?
Yeah, no, the Star Trek The Next, like I've said on multiple occasions, I want the Star Trek The Next Generation theme to be played on a baby grand piano as my naked body is shot out of a cannon into low Earth orbit. When I'm dead. Not when I'm alive.
Yeah. Oh. Do we want to talk about the fashion in this episode, Mark? Because this episode has Wesley in his shiny silver ski suit on the thing, but also I think we have to talk at length about the outfit Riker has to wear.
I cannot get across how much I hate abso-fucking-lutely every fucking thing about this episode. I hate the fact that they've gone, let's write an episode about how difficult it is to be a woman, written entirely by men. which ends. Where did I write this? It ends right. It's just a bunch of men telling women that their issues aren't that bad. And it should have ended with just in big the re-release episode, because obviously they didn't have these at the time. The re-release episode should just have ended with, in giant white letters, # not all men.
The other thing I need to bring up is constantly throughout this episode, we are being told that a better, more interesting episode of Star Trek is happening off screen. Yeah. Because whilst this is all going on, there's a disease on the Enterprise that's caused people to get sick, and that's running through as like a B plot. It's basically an excuse to make it so we can't just beam people up from the planet or whatever. But also to put in like a ticking clock on this, a bunch of Romulans are attacking an outpost in the neutral zone, and it's like, we've not had Romulans yet,
Yeah.
Mark. There's not been any Romulans. I saw Romulans at the beginning, and I was like, "Hey, Romulans!" And then it's like, "No, we don't even. They're not even on screen."
This is the first time they've even been mentioned.
Yeah. It's
Shall we? I mean, we may get back to Riker's outfit later after I've finished with this brain hemorrhage. But shall we discuss the fucking holodeck virus?
Oh, so. Is that from the holodeck? Because he says it's from a field trip, and I couldn't work out whether it's a virus that they've caught on the holodeck or if there's a previous field trip that's happened.
Oh, right. So,
but if it's from the holodeck, that's not, and again, that is not and cannot possibly be how the holodeck works.
No. So Wesley and his little friend
are going skiing.
In the holodeck with like an instructor, right? They specify that they're going with a ski instructor.
Imagine that's your job. It's like, I'm on board the Enterprise, the Federation's flagship vessel. What's your job? Oh, a ski instructor. I'm sorry, what?
Hey, I 100% would take that job because I think people would be really interested in that. I mean, it's weird that you're on the Enterprise and you're a ski instructor. That's bizarre. And it's like, yeah, but I get to sit in 10 forward. Like, Guinan still asks me about my problems as an imaginary ski instructor, which largely boiled down to, is what I am doing, does it actually have a purpose if skiing isn't real?
I would like to. Now I want an episode of Star Trek that's entirely skiing themed. It's like, so basically, the Romulans are trying to buy out the ski lodge and close it down, so we have to win the big ski race.
Because like my job is I'm a walking tour guide. Like that's I sort of run a walking tour business, but because of the pandemic, I've had to shift that to a largely online model, where I have gone out and videotaped in the 1980s. I've been out in the 1980s and I videotaped the entire route.
You should use Betamax. It's got better quality.
No, you're right. It's a higher resolution. Yeah, it takes longer to stream. But I now have people call in on Zoom, and I green screen myself into the tour to deliver it as live. But it's not really happening live. Obviously, that stuff was filmed in like 2020. But I can see where the ski instructor on the Enterprise would have like a real genuine mental crisis. I've had it. I've been like, is it important enough that my job somewhat brings happiness and joy, even though it's not, I'm not really doing anything. It's essentially like the Matrix, isn't it? And then Guinan would hand me another martini, and I'd be like, oh, it's so hard. Anyway, so right, I must have missed that bit when he mentioned a field trip, because when he said field trip, I thought that he just meant another day in the holodeck on a different mountain.
It's not specified, so I also don't know if it's weird. If there's a virus from the holodeck, that should be the episode.
Yeah.
But yeah,
or it should be Wesley goes on a skiing trip in the holodeck, and because the holodeck is a murderous psychopath, it turns on avalanches.
No, he's doing really well. He gets to the bottom of the run, and then that Yeti from Ski Free.
So he throws a snowball at Captain Picard, which goes about as well as throwing a snowball at Captain Picard should be. And then this is where I thought that this is why it was a holodeck virus, was because, well, for one thing, Picard gets sick after being hit by the snowball, which is bizarre because being cold isn't what gives you the cold. That's not accurate. Having cold clothes doesn't help. And two, the first time that we see Dr. Beverly Crusher, she walks out of the medical quarters holding what is very obviously a circuit diagram. Which made me go, oh, is holodeck virus now on the ship that has the psychopathic holodeck, is holodeck virus now enough of an issue that she already knows how to deal with it?
These were all questions that were brought to Gene Rodenberry, and his response was, "Women are devious."
You can't trust them.
This episode is the reason why in season 2 of Star Trek: The Next Generation we get Dr. Polanski. Okay, because if you don't know, the next season of this doesn't have Gates McFadden playing Dr. Beverly Crusher because she was incredibly outspoken about how sexist the writing was.
One of my favorite points from watching the episode is so everyone starts to get sick. So Picard gets sick, Worf starts to get sick. They all start getting what's basically quite a severe cold. Which is obviously what COVID-19 is. You fucking authoritarian dicks, just fucking get over it. And he then put and Bevel and Dr. Crusher tells Picard that he has to be relieved of duty, which then leaves her, from what I understand, leaves her as the highest ranking officer on the ship because Riker's away.
Yeah.
And so immediately he puts LaForge in charge. And Laura, I put down here, Laura is really angry at Geordie being in charge because how many women have been stepped over to make that happen? and now the incel has to deal with the feminazis down on the planet.
There's the opening of this, like after the intro when you get Picard's log and he's talking about the society. He frequently doesn't say women, he says the female, and it's one of the most incel-y sounding things I have ever heard.
Yeah.
Also, I want to point out this: Tasha Yar is a complete bitch in this episode because they arrive on the planet, they meet the ruler of this planet, they have a maybe 1 minute long conversation, and in that time the ruler of this planet uses the phrase "good question" on 2 occasions. And then the next scene, Tasha Yar says, as the mistress is so fond of saying, "good question." It's like, for fuck's sake, you've met her once, you've had one conversation that lasted a minute, don't fucking assassinate this woman's character.
And also maybe Riker was asking good questions and she was just surprised that a man can ask good questions. Because, again, Eddie, as I've written down here, this whole episode is about how, with a bit of moxie and some self-belief and determination, men can overcome any obstacle.
Well, that's really what's been holding feminism back, is a lack of moxie.
Yeah. I also just noticed that I've written down, is this guy supposed to be the Emmeline Pankhurst of this situation?
Okay.
We ain't got on to the rebels.
I love the fact that at one point the crew of the Enterprise are like, right, if we want to detect the BOA crew are like, if we want to detect where these people are, we need to find an element that they might have on them that it doesn't naturally occur on this planet. So they need to have a look at their library. And Riker asks if they can look at their library, and the response is like, men can't read. You know, like men said to women frequently in the 1950s.
Yeah. Also, that just shows a clear misunderstanding of how research works, sort of, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to have a list of the things that they don't have that they don't know about.
Yeah. But then they put this is how I love. They put Data forward, and they're like, "Well, Riker, instead of arguing that men can read, says, what about Data? He's not a man; he's a robot." And the lead woman, gives a certain look where she's like, "Oh, what a novel idea." I'm certain she thinks Data is a sex bot.
Yeah,
because her thinking process was exactly the same as the male thinking process on Earth would be if you presented us with a robot woman. It's like, well, I can only think of one reason why you would have made that.
I have thought about that quite a lot, right? Because here's the thing.
Yeah.
This is right. I'm just gonna go and get my own fucking shovel here, right, to start digging this hole.
Yeah.
If you there is oh fuck. I've started this, I'm gonna have to finish it, haven't I? There is no reason to make a robot look like a sexy woman unless it's to have sex with.
No, you're right. Equally, there's no reason for Data to be made anatomically correct unless
No.
Dr. Noonien Singh was just intending on getting railed by him.
Yeah, like there's nothing. There's like there are practical elements of the human body that are unique to both men and women, or male and female presenting. So
Yeah.
there's, if you wanted to create the perfect being, you would sort of take elements of both
Yeah.
and put them together. But if you just make if you just make a robot and you're like, tell me about your robot. What was the design that went into it? And you're like, well, there's this ASMR video I really like. Well, this woman who's 5'6" with a super symmetrical face, but she doesn't have a lot of belief in her own symmetry. But basically, this is her. This is Kiku.
Yeah.
Why did you name her that? Oh, because it's fun. It's fun to call out.
There's a reason why. There's a very specific storyline reason why the AI in Blade Runner 2049 is played by Anna de Armas.
And also, her name is Joy, Joi, which in the parlance of pornography stands for jerk off instructions.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Oh, by the way, I'd like to comment on the thing where Riker has like a date with the woman.
Oh, right. Shall we talk about his outfit now?
He has to wear the outfit, but not only that. Once he's come out wearing it, Troy and Tasha both laugh at him because this is the outfit he's wearing. The only way I can think of saying, like, it's not the fashion that women on Earth were wearing in the 1950s, which is basically is Agent Carter. Yep. Right? Okay. It's like long skirts that go down below the knee and like sensible things because you don't like show. No, this is what women would wear on a planet that was ruled by Vince McMahon. And not current Vince McMahon, 90s Vince McMahon. Right? Right. This is like he's got a nipple out. Yep. And it's barely covered. And he says it's quite comfortable. And they're making fun of him. And at this point, I want to bring up the fact that Riker's response is, do you have a problem with me wearing this because she's a woman? An attractive woman?
Yeah. An attractive woman?
Like, nobody was bringing up her attractiveness, Riker.
Yeah. Fuck me.
I want to mention a very meta moment that happens in this, where it becomes abundantly clear that Riker, as the fictional character of Riker, is not aware of the purpose he serves in the meta construct of Star Trek: The Next Generation, when he says to the leader of this species before they bang, because of course they do, of course that happens, because that's all the women need to sort them out. Is a good seeing too. Riker says, "It's not my function to seduce or be seduced." Well, I'm sorry, Will, but that is literally what your function as a member of the... There is nothing you do that can't be encapsulated in the Picard character, except for making love to green space women.
Yeah.
Not even green, Mark.
No.
It's one of the laziest... Couldn't they have slapped some body makeup on these aliens?
It is...
Made them blue or some shit.
It is bizarre because... As again, I've written down here, this was taken from an article. The episode was intended to be a commentary on apartheid in South Africa. Now, I don't know how much you know about apartheid, Eddie, but there was a an inherent trait about a person that was important when it came to apartheid. Instead, they used gender role reversal. However, there were problems between the cast and director during filming, and Sir Patrick Stewart sought to have the sexist nature of the episode changed. Because, again, Picard doesn't stand for apartheid nor sexism.
No, he doesn't. This is the heroes of this episode are the crew of the freighter, who have landed. They lived there for a bit, and then they ran off into the woods. And it turns out one of them's secretly married to like a high-ranking official. The heroes of this episode, Mark, are activists who are campaigning for men's rights. They are men's rights activists. I know. Even if you do look like a shit space MacGyver, I'm not rooting for you.
Yeah. It is, because I don't believe in like the. Some people on the internet would disagree with this, but I don't really necessarily believe in the tamping down of ideas if they're interesting and they're interesting to discuss, not to implement. But the idea of like, what would an activism movement look like in a world where it was a matriarchal society and men were the ones having to fight for the vote? Because that's, like you said earlier, that's an interesting way of looking at your own your own unconscious biases and kind of and flipping the switch and being, and it's essentially, it's a real call to Jesus. It's a real have a look in the mirror at your own fucking problems and then come to learn together as like one people sort of situation. This is not that.
No, because
this is not interesting.
One of the things they do is they specifically mention that the women of this species are bigger and stronger and have all of the traits of men.
Yeah.
So you're not even getting the interesting idea that it's a woman-dominated society where the traits that women stereotypically are seen to have are more dominant on that planet.
Yeah.
It's just exactly the same society.
Yeah.
But with, yeah, it's... Oh.
Yeah, it would be... I wrote down some things that I said this episode could have worked if they hadn't switched the genders and just had the Enterprise crew rip on people who wanted to prevent women's suffrage. Like that, again, that'd be interesting. What would the what would the 1980s have looked like if women had never gotten the vote? Like, what? That's what Star Trek is for.
And then Tasha Yar as a strong, like as a female character who has a lot of traditionally masculine traits, being the security officer, arriving in that world, having her be the person who interacts with the leader of that and that's much more interesting than Riker just bangs some tolerance into the fucking leader of the fucking planet.
Yeah, I wrote down, thank God Riker was there to talk some sense into these bitches.
No, Mike, he doesn't just talk to them. He also gives her a lamp. So gives it his meditation sphere, and then he turns it on, and it just lights up in the middle. And she's like, "Oh my god, that's so impressive! It's a lamp, love."
Yeah, you have those. We can see it. So the rebels, the fucking right. So the rebels, it's revealed, are working with someone in the female council.
Yeah.
To try and bring about a sort of men's suffrage movement.
Yeah.
And the leaders then decide we can't have that getting out, so we're going to sentence them to death.
Yeah.
Which, again, is quite a stereotypically male thing to do. If there's an issue, kill it.
It's also, Mark, it's like, it's historically literally the worst idea you can do. Yeah. The moment you kill someone for having ideas that are counter to your culture, you create a movement behind that person's ideas. So
can you imagine how different the world would have been if the Romans had showed up at the Sermon on the Mount and went, "Here's 2 more fish, do it again."
Or just let Jesus grow old until he eventually said something racist. More racist than his beef with the Samaritans.
From what I understand, that's what the Martin Scorsese film The Last Temptation of Christ is about. But I've never been able to get through the first 25 minutes of that film because it's tedious.
So it is, but then at the end of the episode, at the end of the film, it turns out that everything you've seen of Jesus doing all of that stuff is like him being tempted by the devil, and he goes, but he decides, no, I don't want to do that. I do want to be nailed to a bit of wood. I'm Willem Dafoe. Mark, at the end of this episode, instead of killing the rebels, what they decide is that all the rebels and the people who support them can go live on this like remote bit of the planet that's like a jungle where they can live, and they'll be left there, And the idea is that instead of being revolutionary, it will slow down, but maybe if they can make a successful society, it will be an example to the rest of them. And it's seen as a very, very happy ending. But I do want to point out that exact thing was what Hitler did to the Jews before the camps. People don't know this, but one of Hitler's first ideas was to repatriate all the Jews to Madagascar and just leave them in the jungle. And I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who's not aware of world history. Not a rousing success. No.
Also, that would have really backfired on Hitler, because if Plague Incorporated is anything to go by, Madagascar is the hardest country to send a disease to. So at the end of the day, we would have had a planet run by the Jews, which I don't know how much, again, you know about Hitler, but that would have been the last thing that he wanted. I actually wrote something about Hitler, because obviously I did. I said, this episode feels like the half-baked jabbering of an incel who's just taken ecstasy for the first time and is trying to hit on a female gender studies student. It reminds me of that sci-fi book that's pretend written by Hitler.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if anybody's not aware of that, it's fucking fantastic. It's because basically a lot of people...
Is it called The Iron Eagle?
Yeah, it's the idea is that Hitler, instead of being a Hitler, moved to America and wrote pulp fantasy books. And the point is, it's a badly written book because fascism is an inherently childish and poorly thought out worldview. Because you believe it's like, oh, everything's gone wrong. Everyone's against me. The world doesn't like me. But instead, you replace everyone with the Jews. It's the mindset of a 14-year-old who hasn't grown up and doesn't know how the world works. It's like, oh, things go wrong. Why is that? Because the universe is a cold and uncaring place.
Yeah.
No. Someone's got it. But that's it's a very interesting read, and it's a very good book in terms of like doing that. But yeah, it's similar to that.
Yeah. Just to go back to your previous point, one of the things, so the actual reason for the virus, not just to give us a ticking time bomb, is that Riker says, I'm going to beam all of these men's rights activists, which is what we're going to call them from now on. Yeah. I'm gonna beam all these red pills up to the Enterprise to save them from being killed. To which Data fucking flat out says that is a blatant disregard of the Prime Directive. Like that, like you could not find a more fucking egregious like going against the Prime Directive. That's literally what it's for. And so he's like, well, I don't care, I'm going to do it. And then Beverly says, no, we've got this weird virus, you can't do it. But, right, he still offers that to the people at the end, and he squares that with Picard. I think he squares it with whoever, Geordi. I don't know. Yeah. Geordi's the one making decisions at this point. So the rebels, who, again, are from the Federation, they're not Starfleet.
Yeah,
they're from the Federation. That's why Starfleet is responsible for them, but doesn't have any control over what they do. So when they decide to stay on the planet, Riker can't really do anything about it. But the issue is, they're being told, right, here are your choices. You can either die or be sent to a desolate wasteland where you might come up with a society to rival this. No point does he go, actually, we have a third option. Why don't we go and live on the fucking Enterprise where they have replicators and holodeck ski holidays?
Why don't we colonize another empty planet in this system with fucking Federation shit?
Yeah.
But it's...
Why don't you come back with me to my planet?
This is another great example of the fact of this being like there's two major issues with this, and one that we've noticed a lot in this season, which is nobody in the writers' room they don't have what the Prime Directive is worked out exactly and written on a wall. Because again, seems like it's one of those planets where they shouldn't even be there.
Yeah.
But then the other problem is, and this is a problem that comes up throughout all of Star Trek, which is Starfleet and the Federation are two different things. But the main way we experience the Federation is through Starfleet. So for a lot of writers, they kind of get tangled together. And then you get situations like this where it's like, oh, they're not actually in Starfleet, so we don't have any say over them. It's like, but they're Federation citizens. So if they're breaking Federation laws, which the Prime Directive is, then
I question that. Does the Prime Directive apply to citizens?
is it a law or is it an order? That's the important question. If it's an order that Starfleet have, then like
the word directive would
makes
it sound more like an order.
Does that mean that if we lived in the Federation, I could buy a shuttle, load it up with stuff and like Federation tech, fly off the edge of the grid, find I don't know, Bronze Age civilization and just be worshipped as a god?
Now, yeah, I mean, conceivably yes, but here's my question, Eddie, because I like to think I know you. We've been friends for a while, right? I like to think I know sort of the way you think.
Yeah.
How many planets would it take before you got bored and started a Nazi planet?
I don't think I would do it. Here's what I would do. I wouldn't do it as part of my plan, but if I got to a planet and they didn't treat me enough as a god, I'd totally set them on like the Nazi path and then leave. Just be like, yeah, take that, you fuckers.
Yeah, I would do I would use technology to make myself look like Jesus. Like, what if that's what Jesus was? Just a guy with a replicator, anti-gravity boots.
What if that's how First Contact gets made? Like some spaceship lands in fucking Central Park, New York, and like all of the world's media gather around, and then it opens, and like 8 Jesuses walk out. One of them just comes down and like taps on their lap and goes, so we've recently found out that one of our species came here about 2,000 years ago and has caused some problems.
Yeah, and but the thing is, right, how would we recognise them as Jesuses? Because all of our Jesus iconography is clothes from the Middle East and like a crown of thorns, and a cross, which again would be the last thing that these people would want to see if that's their only weakness.
Maybe. No, he didn't die, did he? He just fuck, I'm gonna have to pretend to be dead so they'll take me off this cross.
Oh yeah.
And then when they bury me, I can get away.
Go hanging out in that cave for 3 days, yeah. Because one of my favourite stories about Jesus is when Jesus comes back, and the way that my RE teacher told me is, so anyway, all the disciples, right, they all got a hotel room. And I'm like, right, okay. So they all got a hotel room, and Jesus came back, and he was there, and he chaps on the door, and he's like, hello, it's me, Jesus. And Thomas is like, no, I don't believe you. And he goes, it's me, look at my hands, there's a hole, put your finger through it. Like, I got a bunch of guys in their 30s who probably have quite a lot of wine. Bunch of single men in their 30s at night after having a bunch of wine. It's not gonna be as wholesome as that, is it? He's gonna be like, fucking mate, just go, just 2 fingers straight in there. Go for it. Put my hands together like that, and you can go all the way through. And then somebody's like, what else can we get through the holes in his hands? Somebody, do you know what? Fucking get the toilet brush. Try it.
And before you know it, David Cameron's in the corner fucking a pig's head.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's only a few more things I want to talk about on this episode. I want to say I'd like Geordie getting in the chair.
Yeah.
Like I know that he gets to do a make it so to Worf, and Worf's like nice.
Yeah.
I like that. I also really want to talk about how good Data is in this episode, because Data at the end of the episode gets beamed up to the Enterprise, and he's like the only person who isn't sick. And like Riker's like, you've got to get to the neutral zone and fight off these Romulans before it's too late, is what he says. And then Data calls back down, and Riker's like, why are you still here? I ordered you to go there. He goes, no, you ordered me to get there before it's too late, and I've done the calculations, and I've got, it's like, and I don't have to leave for 48 minutes. I love that, because it's like, that's Data doing like the logical computer thing of like, I've worked out the exact wording of your orders.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. That's it. That's all. Oh, also, at the end of this episode, I like Picard saying to Riker, I look forward to your reports. Because that just to me implies that Picard makes Riker give him a report of all of the times he has sex. And I just imagine, all I got in my head is, you know, the character that Patrick Stewart plays in American Dad. Very good, number one.
Why doesn't Picard just watch the episode?
He knows they've got it. He showed it to Riker.
There's a joke in Star Trek Lower Decks where one of the characters gets transferred to the Titan, which is Riker's ship.
Oh, right.
And I hope it's a reference to the pilot of TNG. If not, I know exactly what it's a reference to. But there's a bit where Riker comes out of the turbo lift onto the bridge, and Deanna Troy's there, and she's like, "Where have you been?" And he goes, "I was just watching some of the later episodes of Enterprise. That was a really good show, by the way." No, but there's a joke that I think I've talked about it on this podcast before, and I tried to explain this to Laura, and I've never seen anyone look more bored. There's a bit where the main character, whose name escapes me, I can't remember, but she walks by one of the secondary characters, and it's in a situation where the ship's been overrun, and he's like tied to a wall, and she's like, "Boimler, how you doing?" And he goes, "I don't know. They keep trying to show me these 4 lights." I had to pause it.
That's my favourite TNG episode.
Yeah.
That's some of the best. That for me is, I feel about that episode the way you feel about Measure of a Man. I love that because Picard is naked and tied to a wall and still manages to defeat his enemy with words. But yeah. The only other thing I've got written down on here is that Crusher won't let Riker beam back on because she doesn't want to breach quarantine. So I think Riker should have just told her that he needed to come on board for a work event.
Very good.
Satire.
Very clever.
Hopefully, we record these a week ahead, so hopefully he's gone by the time you listen to this. Yeah. That fucking prick. But yeah, I don't know. What's the next episode?
What a pile of shit.
Oh, I know what the next episode is. It's 11001101. Right. It's not a good episode, but we're going to have a lot to fucking talk about. Right. Yeah.
Excellent.
If you this is skippable. This is, if you're going back, I think if we're going to call Code of Honor the racist episode, I think this is the sexist episode. Well, no, they all are. They're all sexist. Yeah. This was fun. It was miserable to watch. Such a good, you can do so much interesting with the concept.
What a waste of time and effort.
Someone made the costumes for this, Mark. I'm glad they didn't waste any time putting any makeup on the aliens. Fuck it, it's not worth it.
No.
Yeah.
Right. Well, better get back to work.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.